Hello and welcome to our podcast. Everyone, I'm Emma.
And I'm Max. We're so happy to have you here today. We're talking about something really helpful for English learners. Today's topic is about learning how to think in English. This can make a big difference in how well you speak English, right, Emma?
Exactly, Max. Learning to think in English is such a great way to boost your fluency. If you can start to think in English, it means you'll spend less time translating from your own language in your mind. It'll help you speak faster and more naturally.
That's right. Let's start with why it's so important. When we translate in our heads, it can make us slower and sometimes it makes us more nervous. For example, if someone asks you a question in English and you have to think in your language first, then find the right English words, you might feel stressed or like you're taking too long. Thinking in English can help make conversations feel easier.
Yes, and it's not just about speed. It's also about confidence. When you're thinking in English, your brain gets used to English patterns and words. You feel more natural. It's like practicing English all the time, even if you're just thinking.
That's a good point, so let's talk about some tips to help start thinking in English. One of the easiest ways is to start with simple things around you. When you see something like a chair or a cup, just say the word for it in English in your head. This way, your brain gets used to using English words without needing to translate.
And once you're comfortable with single words, you can start with simple sentences. For example, if you're cooking, you might think, I am cutting vegetables or I need to boil water. This practice can be done every day, even if you don't have a lot of time.
Yes, and you can try thinking about what you're going to do next in English. Like, I am going to go to the store or I will call my friend. These are small steps, but they help a lot. It's like training your mind little by little.
Another great tip is to use English when planning your day. Maybe you have a notebook or a planner. Try writing down what you'll do that day in English. For example, at 10 a.m., I will have a meeting, or at 2 p.m., I'll study English. Writing your schedule in English helps you think about your day in English too.
Absolutely. And don't worry if it feels strange or if you make mistakes. The goal is just to get comfortable. Even native speakers don't always think in perfect sentences, right?
So true, Max. Sometimes we think in short phrases or even images. And that's okay in English, too. Just think of words or short sentences at first, and you'll get used to it. If you forget a word, don't be hard on yourself. You can look it up later.
Yes, and another fun way to practice is by talking to yourself in English. It may sound a bit funny, but you don't need anyone around. Just say things out loud in English. It can be as simple as saying, I am brushing my teeth, or I am walking to the bus stop. It helps your brain and your mouth to get used to English.
Exactly, Max. And if you're too shy to talk out loud, even whispering works. Or, if you prefer, just think it quietly to yourself. The idea is to get used to the sounds and rhythm of English.
And let's not forget about describing things around us. For example, when you're outside, you might think the sky is blue or the sun is bright, or if you're at a cafe, you could think there are many people here or I'm drinking coffee. These are simple phrases, but they help you stay in the habit of thinking in English.
Yes, observing things around you and thinking in English can really help. And it's okay to start small. You don't have to describe everything in detail. Just notice one or two things and think about them in English. Little by little, it will become easier.
I love that approach, and here's another idea. Try talking about how you feel in English. You could say, I feel happy or I am tired. This helps you connect with your emotions in English, which can make it feel more natural to speak.
Good idea, Max. We all have feelings every day, and describing them in English is a great way to practice. Plus, it can even help you feel more relaxed about speaking English because you're talking about yourself.
And remember, none of this has to be perfect. Even if you don't know a word, you can skip it or use a simpler one. The main goal is to make English part of your thinking process.
Exactly.
Now that we've talked about starting with simple words and phrases, let's go even deeper. I want to bring up something that can really help, which is visualizing situations in English. Think about a situation you know well, like ordering food at a restaurant. Picture yourself there and imagine the things you would say in English. For example, "Hello, I'd like to order," or "Can I have the menu?" This helps you practice for real conversations.
Yes, visualizing is a great technique. When you picture yourself speaking English, it prepares your mind. So you're not only practicing words but also training your brain for real-life interactions. You can do this with any common situation like buying groceries, meeting a friend, or even asking for directions.
And the good thing about visualizing is that you can do it anywhere and anytime. You don't need to be in the actual situation. Let's say you're on the bus. You can imagine you're at the supermarket. Think of the things you would say to the cashier. It might be, "Hello, how are you?" Or "I'd like a bag, please." Just by practicing in your head, you're helping yourself feel more comfortable with these phrases.
Right, and you can make it even more interesting by adding new vocabulary words to these situations. For example, in a restaurant, you might think of different dishes or drinks you'd like to try ordering. Maybe instead of just water, you imagine asking for iced tea or lemonade. Or instead of saying salad, you could say Caesar salad. Expanding your vocabulary this way keeps it fun.
That's a great tip, Emma. Adding variety keeps you from feeling bored, and it really helps you sound more natural. And another way to add variety is by using English in daily activities, even when you're alone. For example, if you're watching a show or reading something, try to summarize it in English. Think, "This show is about," or "The story is interesting because."
Yes, summarizing is a great tool. Even if you're just summarizing it in a few simple sentences, it helps you understand and process English better. And it also makes you think in English because you're putting your thoughts into English sentences.
Another trick is to set reminders in English. For example, on your phone, you can set reminders for things you need to do. Instead of writing "do laundry," you could write "time to do laundry," or if you have a reminder for studying, you could write "study English for 10 minutes." These small changes help English feel like a natural part of your day.
I love that idea, Max. It's so easy to set reminders, and every time you see them, it's like a little English practice. And you can do the same with labels. If you're at home, you could put sticky notes on things with their English names, like mirror or kitchen. It's a simple way to see English words every day.
Yes, labels are fantastic, especially if you're someone who learns best by seeing things. You can also try writing a few phrases that you want to remember and stick them somewhere you see often, like on your fridge or desk. This way, even when you're not actively studying, you're still getting familiar with English words and phrases.
Exactly. And when you get used to seeing and thinking about these words in English, it becomes second nature. Another technique I really like is using English when you're learning something new, like a hobby. For example, if you're into cooking, try using English recipes or even think in English as you follow the recipe steps.
Yes, cooking is a fantastic way to practice English. You can start by thinking in simple steps like chop the onions or boil the pasta. It's like following instructions in English, and it makes learning feel active and real. Even if you're doing it alone, it's still great practice.
And if cooking isn't your thing, you can still try using English while doing other hobbies. Maybe you like drawing or going for a run. While you're drawing, you could think, "I'm drawing a tree." Or while running, you might say, "I'm running in the park." You don't have to say it out loud, but just thinking it in English can help.
Good point, Emma, and this also works with social media. For instance, when you post a picture, try writing the caption in English. It doesn't have to be long, even a short sentence is good practice. You could say "beautiful day with friends" or "enjoying my coffee." Using English like this makes it part of your everyday routine.
Absolutely. And if you're chatting with friends who also want to practice English, you can try messaging them in English. Even if it's just a few sentences, it's great practice. Plus, it helps you think in English because you're having a real conversation, just like you would in person.
And speaking of real conversations, practicing with people is one of the best ways to start thinking in English. If you don't have friends who speak English, you can still talk to people online or join language exchange groups. There are lots of language learning communities where you can find people who want to practice too.
Yes, talking with people, even online, can really improve your English thinking skills. It's one thing to think in English when you're alone, but when you're in a conversation, you have to think faster. This makes you more comfortable with real-life English, which is so helpful.
Another good tip is to listen to English as much as you can. Listening to English music, podcasts, or even watching movies without subtitles helps train your brain to think in English. You can pick up new words, phrases, and accents just by listening.
Yes, and try to repeat some of the things you hear. If you're watching a movie and hear a good phrase, pause and say it to yourself. It could be something like, "How are you doing?" or "That sounds great." Repeating what you hear helps with fluency and pronunciation.
Exactly, and don't worry if you feel like you're making mistakes. Thinking in English isn't about perfection, it's about getting comfortable. The more you practice, the easier it gets, and you'll start to feel more confident. Mistakes are just part of the process.
Absolutely, Max, mistakes are totally normal. In fact, making mistakes is a good sign because it means you're trying and learning.
All right, everyone, now that we've covered so many tips to help you start thinking in English, let's talk about one more important thing: patience. Learning to think in another language takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. So, if you're feeling frustrated or stuck, remember that it's totally normal.
Yes, Max, patience is key when you're learning something as big as a new language. It's easy to feel like you're not improving fast enough. But even small progress is still progress. Just remember, every time you think in English, even for a few seconds, you're training your brain.
Exactly, and sometimes progress isn't obvious. You might not notice it every day, but over time, you'll see the results. For example, you might start finding it easier to understand people speaking English, or you might catch yourself using English words without even realizing it.
Yes, and another thing to remember is that everyone learns at a different speed. Just because someone else seems to think in English faster doesn't mean you're not improving. Learning is personal, and it's okay to go at your own pace.
Absolutely, Emma, and let's talk about another fun way to get comfortable thinking in English, telling stories to yourself. For example, you can think about something that happened during your day and describe it in English. Let's say you went to the park. You could tell yourself, "Today, I went to the park. I saw a lot of people walking their dogs. The weather was nice." It doesn't have to be a long story, but it's good practice.
Yes, storytelling is a wonderful exercise, and you can do it about anything. You could talk about a meal you had, a place you visited, or even a movie you watched. And if you have a journal, you could try writing these stories down in English. Writing things out helps you think deeply in English and gives you more time to find the right words.
Great point, Emma. Journaling is a fantastic way to reflect on your day in English. You don't have to write pages, even a few sentences are enough. And if you're feeling adventurous, you could even try writing down your goals or dreams in English. It could be as simple as, "My goal is to improve my English," or "One day, I want to visit London."
That's a lovely idea, Max. Writing about your goals in English can even make you feel closer to achieving them. Plus, when you're writing, you're naturally thinking in English as you decide what words to use.
And another thing that helps a lot is learning to ask yourself questions in English. For example, you could start by asking yourself simple questions like, "What did I eat for breakfast?" Or "What do I need to do today?" Then, answer those questions in English. This way, you're practicing both asking and answering.
Yes, asking yourself questions is a fantastic habit. It keeps your mind active and makes English feel like a natural part of your thoughts. You can also make it a bit more challenging over time. Once you're used to simple questions, try asking more detailed ones, like what is one thing I learned today, or what made me happy today.
Exactly, Emma, and when you're ready, you can even try answering those questions out loud. Sometimes speaking the answers can help make English feel more real. It's like having a mini conversation with yourself, and it's great practice for both thinking and speaking.
Speaking of conversations, if you're comfortable, you could also try speaking English with a pet if you have one. Pets don't judge, and they won't care if you make mistakes. You could say things like, "Good morning," or "Let's go for a walk." It's just another way to get used to English in a fun, stress-free way.
And if you don't have a pet, plants work too. You could talk to your plants or even to an imaginary friend if you like. Sometimes talking out loud, even when you're alone, helps your brain get used to thinking in English.
That's so true, Max. And another tip that's helped many learners is practicing positive self-talk in English. If you're feeling a bit nervous about speaking English, remind yourself in English, "I'm doing well" or "I am improving every day." These positive phrases can help build your confidence.
I love that, Emma. Positive self-talk is powerful. And when you say it in English, it also boosts your thinking. Even simple phrases like "I can do this" or "I'm learning" are great reminders and good for your English practice.
And finally, remember to celebrate your small wins. Maybe you thought of a new word in English today, or maybe you went a whole minute thinking in English without switching to your own language. These small steps really add up.
Yes, celebrating small wins is so important. It keeps you motivated and reminds you that you're making progress. And remember, everyone who speaks English fluently now was once a beginner. So keep going and don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's all part of the journey.
That's right, Max. And with every little bit of practice, you're getting closer to thinking in English naturally. It takes time, but if you keep at it, you'll see amazing results.
So, thank you all for joining us today. We hope these tips help you start thinking in English a little more each day. Remember, practice makes progress, and with patience, you'll get there.
Yes, and if you found this podcast helpful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips. Also, share it with your friends and family who might be learning English too.
Thank you, everyone. Keep practicing, keep thinking in English, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye, and happy learning!